The pick is in.
The Los Angeles Chargers have made a selection in the 2024 NFL Draft. Alongside Locked On College Football host Spencer McLaughlin, I'm Tanitra Batiste, and we are joined by Daniel Wade of Locked On Chargers to break down the Chargers selecting Joe Alt with the number 5 pick. So, Daniel, the Chargers look to shore up that O-line, obviously, with the selection of Joe Alt, but was that the right way to go for this team?
It isn't the way that I would have gone with it. I understand with the new regime taking over, there's a certain kind of cultural change that is definitely shocking Charger fans so far, from the trade of Keenan Allen, right, to now with the 5th overall pick, taking an offensive lineman when you got rid of your 2 biggest receivers during this offseason. So I understand wanting to just make the offensive line the strength of this football team. You look at Michigan team, you look back to his 49ers team, he definitely has a type that he likes, right? He likes physical, hard-nosed teams that run the football well, and it worked for him in Michigan. He just won a national championship. But to me, I didn't think Joe Alt was the best player available. I would have gone in a different direction, but I understand them wanting to just make the offensive line a strength of this team, which it hasn't been in a long time.
Yeah, and like you said, you could make the case for the Chargers to have gone for a wide receiver with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams gone. So why not a receiver with 2 of the big 3 still on the board?
That's a great question, Tanitra. I mean, I guess they weren't listening to me, because that is the way that I would have gone with it. Absolutely. I mean, I think they got put in a very unique position of having a chance to get a few really, really unique top-end receivers that are all probably going to go in the top 10, and we already know that, with the Chargers losing Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, that room went from one of the rooms that had the best wide receiver duos in the league to a lot of question marks around Quentin Johnston, who's a first-round pick that didn't produce his first season, right? Josh Palmer heading into the last year of his deal. So the question is, who is Justin Herbert throwing to now? Because you had a chance to take 2 guys that may have been number 1 wide receivers in other draft classes, and you went and took a tackle who is a really good prospect. But I just thought it was a unique position where their biggest need and the best player available were both Malik Neighbors, and they decided to pass on it. They could have argued Rome Odunze. I would have been good with that too, but I think you had to come away with a blue chip offensive skill player for Justin Herbert to throw the ball to, and they didn't.
And I think when you look at Joe Alt as a selection at 5, you're thinking to yourself, like you said, you've got those maybe generational talents at wide receiver, a couple of other opportunities there to pick, but that's where they went. But there were some rumblings that maybe they would have traded down so that they could get more draft assets. What do you think was maybe that reason why ultimately they said, hey, we're going to just stay at 5?
To me, it seems like just a lack of interest in J.J. McCarthy, I would have to think, just because it seems like if you wanted to go offensive tackle and you could trade to pick 11, for example, with the Vikings or a team like that, you would still have such a good crop of offensive tackles to choose from. Like, that is a strength of this draft class. In the top 20 picks, you could see 5 or 6 tackles taken. So I thought if they wanted to go that direction, trade back, get more assets for a team that has a ton of holes in it, admittedly, but get something back instead of just missing on potentially the best player available at 5. I understand it. I would have rather them gotten more assets. It takes 2 to tango. Obviously, the right deal obviously didn't come for them, but still, that would have felt a lot better, I think, passing up on a generational wide receiver if at least you felt you were getting more assets to help you in the future.
For more on the Chargers, subscribe to Locked On Chargers on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Spencer, Jim Harbaugh's commitment to the run game kind of almost assured us the Chargers were probably going to go O-line at 5, but why do you think it was Joe Alt in the end?
Well, I think Alt's the number 1 tackle on most big boards out there, and he should be. You talk about being NFL ready to step in and contribute for the Chargers. Joe Alt is that sort of guy. You line him up opposite Rashawn Slater, and I think you have a situation similar to what the Detroit Lions have with their 2 outstanding tackles, one of whom in Penei Sewell out of Oregon. They just paid a huge, huge contract to. I think that's the mold that Jim Harbaugh is envisioning for this Chargers offensive line. I would have liked to seen the Chargers go receiver here, because Justin Herbert is thrown to a guy who was kind of declared a bust last year as a first-round pick, and a guy we just heard is in the final year of his contract and is a marginal receiver in the NFL to begin with. So it's not the pick that I would go with, but certainly it's not wasted on a guy that isn't going to be a good player.
For continuing coverage of the 2024 NFL Draft, subscribe to Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.